My name is Matt Hurlbert. I'll be your moderator and host this evening for this special meeting for the Wards 4 and 7 NPA. Basic ground rules that we typically always cover before we get started is to listen to others when speaking, respect the agenda and the process. We want you to share your opinions politely, treat each other with respect, have your questions prepared. Keep in mind, this is a digital format. Always mute your volume, which is typically in the lower left-hand corner of your screen, unless you're called on to speak. I don't know if I have the ability to mute everybody at once, but I believe Kirsten does. When we get to a place of voting, we're asking that everyone voting turn their cameras on, at least for their vote. There's no chat room tonight.
Oh, that's gonna show up.
Sorry, Jeff, we can hear you. Jeff just demonstrated the mute. Raise your hands if you have questions, if you want to speak. I have helpers that are going to nudge me or text me if I'm not seeing, or just open your mouth so that you're heard. The meeting, as a reminder, is being recorded by CCTV and is currently being live streamed by YouTube. The recording will be later available on the NPA website and the CCTV website. As far as the agenda goes, you have it. I think maybe as a beginning to open, there have been questions that people have raised about how the process is going to work. I will first tell you this is not my profession, so I'm going to do my darndest to keep on task and keep us in the right field here. Nominations will be taken on the floor. People can self-nominate. People can nominate someone else. Speakers will have time to discuss, or nominators will be able to discuss why they're nominating somebody. The person being nominated will have a chance to speak about their qualifications and why they're interested. There will be an opportunity for the members of the public that are on this meeting to question candidates. When it gets to voting, it's going to be a round robin. So in a moment, we're going to go through and do our traditional roll call that we do at the beginning of every NPA meeting. I and my fellow steering committee members are going to, as each person announces themselves, ask you to state the ward that you're from. There are probably some folks that are sharing a couch and a screen tonight. So if there's more than one person that will be voting on the same screen, when we get to your call, you'll have to express yourselves as two people. My fellow steering committee members will be keeping tally during roll call of the people and their wards. And then when it comes time to a vote, we'll have them separated by Ward 4 and Ward 7. I will go through and make a ward call for each individual person. And once I've completed the list from roll call, I will then ask if anyone else has joined us since that wishes to vote. Once the vote is tallied, like they do on Survivor, it's tallied and it's final. I think that covers everything. The only weird thing is if there is a tie vote, and I think we discussed just before the meeting, in the event of a tie, we'll take a recount live. If the live recount is still a tie, then Evan is going to go on a website called random.org. It will produce I'll let him describe it. It's basically a random number. I don't know that you even need to describe it, but it's basically up to chance, heads or tails, and that's the best process that we can come up with in a live event. And Evan would be able to screen share that so that everybody can see that. So any questions on any of the process procedures? I'm not seeing hands on my screen. So I'm going to move on.
I see one hand.
Whose hand?
I see that Fountain.
Yep.
Oh, go ahead.
Excuse me for if I'm jumping the gun, but I was just hoping you would kind of give an overview of what we're doing and level set it for, I mean, are we adding, do we know what we're doing yet? Are we adding more representation to the wards or less or what?
The overview is coming up on the agenda.
Okay, all right, I'll shut up. Thank you.
Oh, no, you're fine. It's a good question. It's coming. I'm not qualified. Our counselors, both Sarah and Mark, are present in the room, and they're going to do that for us when we get to that point.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions before we move on?
Doesn't look like Ollie is here.
He can join if he's busy. I think it was Mark and Sarah that asked to speak regarding this, but typically Ali joins these meetings, so I would expect he will pop in. So I'm just going to go straight to my agenda and just keep this show rolling. I think the best thing to do at this point is to do our roll call. So I'm going to just go around the screen that's in front of me, and we'll just take it as best we can. The first box in the top left is the Miller Center. So who do we have for residents at the Miller Center?
Hi there, I'm Kristen Lucido, and I have with me two other folks in the community.
The apartment Ward 4. Lynn Bundy, Ward 4.
Lynn, I
Could you repeat your name?
Yeah.
Say again.
I got it, Matt. I have it. Lynn Bundy.
Okay, I'm sorry. Kristen, are you in Ward 407 to be a voting participant?
No, I'm in Ward 6.
Okay, awesome. And that's everybody in the room? My name comes up next, Matt Hurlbert. I am Ward 7. I see Jeff Comstock.
Yep. NPA Steering Committee member, Ward 7.
Jeff Clark.
Jeff Clark, Steering Committee, Ward 4.
Jim Holloway.
Jim Holloway, Ward 4.
Lee Terhune.
Lee Terhune, Ward 4.
Robert Bristow.
Robert Bristow Johnson, and I'm in Ward 7.
Okay. Burgett.
Bridget Bozek, Ward 4.
Jeffrey Cooper.
Well, it's Cliff and Ellen Cooper.
Ah, Cliff.
Ellen Cooper,
Can't
Ward
see you in
4.
that tiny little one. I
Look
know.
at you.
Kids own everything.
My eyes are weak. Sarah Carpenter.
Sarah Carpenter, City Councilor, Ward 4.
Evan.
Evan Litwin, Steering Committee member, Ward 4.
Bob Hooper.
Ward 4, State Rep on the Committee of Jurisdiction and House Government Operations.
Olivia.
Hi, Olivia Taylor, Ward 7 resident.
I see there's another Olivia in case there was any confusion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Olivia Taylor is who I just saw in my photo. So I've got, I'm sorry, I didn't see there were two. Mark Barlow.
I'm Mark Barlow, North District City Councilor, and I'll apologize in advance. There's a
party going on at my house right now, so it's a little loud here.
Coming over.
Yeah, thanks for the invite.
Mark, just for everybody, can you share what ward you live in?
Oh, I'm in Ward 4.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you for the reminder.
Martine.
Is the other Olivia, is her last name Muffy?
Yes.
No, my last name is Mylands, but I'm known as Muffy Mylands.
Got it.
All
Ward
right.
7.
Ward
Thank
7.
you.
But lately I've been using my first name as well. Ward
Thank
7.
Hi, Martine Gulick, Ward 4, School Commissioner.
Thanks, Martine. Marcella?
Hi, Maricela Constantino, Ward 7.
I didn't say that right, but I know how to say it, Marcella. Thank you. Tom Fleury.
There we go. I think I'm unmuted now. Tom Fleury, Ward 7.
Thank you, Tom. Maricela, did I record you correctly? Your Ward 7?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. We have Olivia Deb Booton. Did we-
Yeah, Deb Boughton, resident of Ward 7.
Ward 7. I have a screen that says CEDO NPA. Is that?
That's just me.
That is you. That's what I thought. I have a town meeting. I'm sure that is explainable. And last but not least on my screen, because he's not on video, is Steve Hamlin.
Steve Hamlin, resident, Ward 7.
And Kirsten, if you could please let the attendee that's waiting in so that we can get them on the list.
Yeah, I have promoted them to panelists, but they haven't accepted. So
Okay.
I'm just gonna allow them to talk and keep an eye on them. Carly, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Charlie?
Is that Charlie Gianni from Ward 3 who also works for Channel 17?
Yes, I'm here if you can hear me.
All right, very good.
Okay, mystery solved.
Thanks.
Thank you, Charlie. Have I missed anybody?
We're just doing attendance right now.
We'll just give a second for technology. Hearing no other names, I am going to move on to the resolution overview and ad hoc committee explanations from Councilors Carpenter and Barlow. Take the floor.
So tonight, and I hope a lot of you had a chance to look at our orientation, but in June, the City Council passed a resolution to form what we're referring to as an ad hoc redistricting committee. And the goal of the committee is to provide advice to the City Council via getting input from our residents about what we should look at redistricting. Stepping back, if you've had a chance to read the orientation, every 10 years, census comes out with new population figures, and we've just gotten those. They've not been analyzed. We do not know how they'll affect the neighborhoods. We don't know if we're going to be mandated to redistrict or not, and that will depend on shift of population, whether there's more than a 10% movement between wards. That has not been analyzed, but the City Council wanted to get out sort of early ahead of that and really wants to get citizen input on kind of the shape and look in organization of the elected districts. As you all know, right now we have 8 wards and then 4 districts that allow us to have 12 city councilors and 12 school board members. So what we're asking input for is look at that, look at any other configuration you think is appropriate to start some guidance discussions around how should the elected official districts look. And we may choose to do nothing and keep it entirely the same. We can go anywhere from, 3 to 30 counselors. I mean, I think we're asking to get citizen input on what might provide the best governance for the city. And to provide us with governance as we look at whether or not there's population shifts. So the goal is this committee, there'll be 8 representatives, 1 from each ward, that will begin meeting in middle September through the end of August. And the role is primarily to get out there and help us get input. We'll organize 2 community meetings. The presumption is that the various ward representatives will come back to the ward NPA, and you'll have some meetings yourselves to really try to mull over and discuss what are the big parameters that the council ought to look at as it revisits redistricting. And there may be more discussions related to population, but we really want to start the conversation about kind of what's the ideal configuration, what would serve us best. We're not drawing lines or anything tonight. In response to Deb's question, this kind of quote vote tonight is really only to elect a representative from each of the wards 4 and 7 who will sit on this committee and help sort of absorb, elicit, put together public input on what the best we can see as the configuration for elected officials. And then that will help provide guidance as we look at specific populations. And we're going to want guidance on things like, how we know neighborhoods are important. So that's probably, we don't want to presume that, but we presume that. I mean, how much is incumbency a problem? How open are we to really moving lines, not necessarily to disrupt neighborhoods, but because it might make sense. So those are all the kind of things the ad hoc committee is going to spend some time sort of mulling over. And tonight is to get somebody who's willing to volunteer and do that work. It'll take a chunk of time from September through end of October, could be extended. The goal is to try to get enough guidance and clarity to try to put something together for the March election. That's fairly ambitious, but that was the goal of the resolution. So Councillor Barlow, I don't know if you want to add.
Sure, that was a great overview. I just fill in a couple of other details. So we know, what we do know from the census data is that population growth has been, this was according to a press release that the mayor did a little over a week and a half ago, 2,326. So we went from 42,417 as a city on April 1st, 2010 to 44,743. So we know that, but we don't know, as Councilor Carpenter said, where the changes are. It may not require redistricting. And one of the possible recommendations that would come from this committee is that we do nothing and keep the existing configuration. One of the things that I'd also like to point out is that the intention is to have city attorney resources available to the committee, as well as, and this came up during the informational meeting last week, we want to make sure that you have support staff from the city to help schedule meetings and get rooms, and any other sort of administrative support that you need will also be provided. And as Councilor Carpenter said, it could be, the council is specifically not saying what needs to be considered, but as she suggested, it may be the current configuration, it may be polling places, it may be the number of counselors, whether or not we have districts, current ward boundaries, in consideration, as Sarah mentioned, around neighborhood identities and issues. And the other thing I would say is the product of this committee is a recommendation, a written recommendation that will be delivered to the council. And the council will then use that and to guide a subsequent resolution that'll be used to either, do nothing or to instruct a mapping specialist to use the input to draw one or more candidate maps for consideration. And so that's the only thing I would add.
Thank you, Mark. Sarah, did you have anything else?
Well, no, I just, if there's people have questions. I mean, straightforward and it's not. Tonight's activity is to get a willing, interested volunteer to help us dig in and do the best they can to solicit community input. We understand it's hard to engage people and there's no ideal way to get those kind of inputs, but this is a step in that process.
I'll just add that Ali joined the meeting after roll call. So Ali, do you have anything that you'd like to add? Just talking about the process.
Okay. Looks like Burgett has her hand up, Matt.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Burgett.
You're on mute.
Sorry. Apologies.
Sorry.
I don't know who has an answer to this, but has the council given any thought to qualifications for the candidate? I just don't know. I'm assuming you would want a candidate who knows the city well, knows their neighborhood well, has some background in public policy perhaps, or have you decided to not enunciate any qualifications for other reasons?
I don't think we had that discussion. I think that the role, the NPA has been sort of authorized by the city to be the best local vehicle to get citizen input. So we're looking for citizen input. I think the persons that choose to volunteer or are nominated need to be open to accepting input, synthesizing input, trying to help, just help that process, do some outreach, encourage people to get to the meetings. Certainly you'll need support, but it's, in my opinion, somebody who can sort of synthesize all that. It probably helps to understand backgrounds, but it's got to be an open-minded person who's really wants to hear what the citizens have to say.
I guess I would add that that yes, the hope is that the NPA would have a process that would bring forward candidates, and we're going to hear from hopefully those candidates tonight, and then the body of the NPA could decide whether or not those candidates were qualified or which candidate was most qualified.
Thank you.
Bob Hooper, did you have a question?
Yeah, I guess it is a question. It would seem that hierarchical wise, we're going to select somebody to go forward to the city county council committee, but it might behoove us to also give consideration, since we're talking about neighborhood-based decision making, to form an NPA Ward 4 and 7 based little mini commission to make sure that everybody has a foot in their own neighborhood. And maybe we can come together for a coalition of opinions and direction from that. It might be worth considering.
Maricela?
Just to make sure that I understand the scope of the request, because I thought I heard some things about recommendations and then folks are, raising questions about public policy background. But it sounds like the charge is really just gathering information from the community. So my assumption is that the synthesis is not recommending what the ad hoc committee thinks should be done, but the synthesis is really sort of consolidating what the public is asking for. And then the city councilors will make a decision based on that. So it's not that we would, anybody in that group would synthesize and say, this is what we think you should do. It's really, this is the scope of the opinions of the community. And then the counselors are going to have to decide what to do. Is that a clear understanding of what the task is?
Yes, I think so. And Councilor Barlow can pop in. And it can be over the map. I mean, the obvious questions on the table. Is the district system stay or go? Do we look at what we did in the past? Do we increase it? Do we decrease it? So, and what did you hear people say about the importance or lack of importance? What things are the most important if we have to redraw lines? What's most important to folks? Is it keeping the same polling place? Is it keeping the same, close to the same ward lines, or are citizens open to redrawing if neighborhoods stay essentially the same? It's trying to re-articulate what is important to people.
I guess I now would add that I think your notion of synthesis is a good one, and I think it is. It's probably asking the synthesizing a collective sort of strategy around what questions need to be asked, and then synthesizing the input that you gather at the public meetings. There may be certain themes that arise. There may be where there's disagreement, I guess, is try to tease out what the important aspects of that are. So it is sort of open-ended and organic in a way, but I have faith in a committee like this to probably get those right recommendations for us. Better than the city council just assuming that they know what's best for folks.
Thanks, Mark. I see a question from Martine.
Thank you. Yeah, we may all be asking the same question over and over again at this point, but I would ask of Mark and Sarah that at some point, if you could make it clear to the populace of Burlington what exactly redistricting would mean to us. I would love to learn. If we redistrict, does it mean another school commissioner? Does it mean another city councilor? I'm hearing bits of what you're talking about in terms of polling places and stuff like that, but it would be really nice to have a clarity on what redistricting would mean for us. And I'm also wondering what the expectation of this person is going to be on the ad hoc committee. Will they be coming to NPA meetings, gathering our opinions, and then going back to the committee? Like, what's the communication system going to be?
Well, I think it's going to be up to the committee as a whole to figure that out. It's a fairly intense time. The presumption is, and it's up to this body, that you'd want to nominate or elect somebody who says to you, or you feel confident will come back to you, meaning the NPA, and get input. It's a 6-week period, at least at this point in time. So it's not tons of meetings, but it's a goal. I mean, I do believe honestly that in September or October, this NPA should devote a meeting to the discussion so the representative can hear that. In terms of your questions, Martine, again, it's quite open-ended. They could recommend more counselors or less counselors or the same count. I mean, so it's really to try to get an affirmation of what do folks think might work the best. Is the current system the best? We had a system that we had for many years. Some people prefer that. And then there's kind of everything in between. There's a bunch of different iterations. So, you know, where are people leaning, you know, and that's what we're trying to get the pulse of. And, you know, what does that mean practically if we add or subtract counselors is almost like a second layer. I think it says, what do people think would work the best?
And I just to follow on again, I think that there will have to be education around redistricting. There was a really good sort of overview that Eileen Blackwood did for the council before we voted on the resolution. It was informational. I've shared that PowerPoint with a number of people. I'll definitely give it to the NPA steering committee as well, so they can put it up somewhere. But that talks about the process of redistricting. This process, this committee process will be just, like I said, to gather input, provide recommendations, and then the council will use those recommendations to actually move forward from there. And like I say, that work might be doing nothing to changing the current district configuration or proposing. Ultimately, the voters have to decide. It's not the council. The council can put forward a plan, which is essentially a charter change that would be on the ballot. And if we get it done by, if there is a change to be had and we get it on the town meeting day ballot, the voters can decide if they want that or don't. And if they do, then we would have whatever the result of that ends up being: more counselors, fewer counselors, the same number of counselors in a different configuration or whatever. But I think that the other question you had, Martine, was around the school commissioners. And I know that the school commission and the city council have sort of been mirror images of each other. And although we haven't talked about that either, I would defer to the city attorney, I guess, on that, because I don't know if they have to be or they just are by tradition or whatever. But I suppose that's also something that could be discussed if people like, if the residents currently like that configuration.
Thanks, Mark. That'd be nice to know for sure. Thank you.
Actually, and I think no one has brought that up, but that can be clarified. And I sort of want to say, I mean, one of the things that motivated at least me is people have expressed, I don't even know what the right term is, a little bit of discontent. And so I just think it's important every 10 years to reaffirm where you are. And communities our size do it differently. I mean, some communities don't have wards, they do it all large. So it's really to try to take a pulse about what might work for Burlington. You know, we don't want to miss the opportunity to do it. It's a charter change and a redistricting is a huge commitment. So you don't want to do it lightly, but we have to sort of look at it anyway because of the population shift. So if we're looking at it anyway, we certainly should get these bigger concepts out there. And again, you don't want to do it lightly, but it sort of seemed like the right time to look at it all. We may or may not have to redraw lines, although there's 2,300 new people. We just aren't quite sure where they are. So we should be looking at it all.
Thanks, Sarah. I'm going to move on. One more question, actually a few more questions. Jeff Clark has been waiting patiently.
Thanks, Matt. Mark and Sarah, you mentioned the population going up, and I don't have those numbers. I didn't write them down, but I think that's an important number. And
2,300, we think.
2,326, according to the mayor.
great, thanks. And I think you've answered, I think, part of my question, but maybe I'll the second part, that this ad hoc committee will give you a recommendation based on input and meetings, and so the input goes to city council. City council is gonna, how will you deliberate and determine that you will or will not change the districts and, you know, the makeup of the city council, and then from there, based on your deliberations, you put it out to vote in March, ideally. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes, and I don't believe we've decided ultimately how we will decide. I mean, Mark referenced that we will essentially create a resolution with guiding principles that we will give to the city's mapping specialists to present or represent to us options. And the guiding principles should be based a lot on the feedback we get. It won't be ultimately or entirely, it doesn't even have to be. I mean, I'm committed to try to listen to that, but you know, we don't have to. So the goal is you'll provide the input to us. We will reorganize and try to synthesize that and say to the city mapping specialists, give us some options that look like this.
Thanks, Sarah.
I have nothing more to add to that.
I will go to Cito. Is that you, Kirsten?
Yeah, so I'm here with Dave and Lynn, and I think we both have questions.
Hi, Matt. Dave Hartnett.
Can you hear us okay?
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
Go ahead. Thank you, Dave.
My question is, when will we get the actual information from the census about if there is need of change for redistricting lines?
My understanding, no later than September 30th. I think, in fact, they have some of it now, but we were told officially September 30.
And I'm curious, in the resolution that was formed by this council and sponsored by you, Mark, you excluded former city councilors from participating. So like I was interested in serving in Ward 4, but I cannot. And I was curious why you excluded former city councilors from being on this ad hoc committee.
Well, I mean, I can say only from when Councilor Barlow can answer his, we really want citizen input. We don't, the city council itself will have plenty of time to weigh in. I think everybody's opinion should be weighted equally. We're trying to sort of have a cleaner slate. Let's look at all the different options and have it perhaps be a little bit less political. Let's be open to whatever we want to consider. And so we just felt that former elected officials did it one way, current officials do it another way. And so we're asking the public, you know, what do you think? There'll be plenty of time, as you well know, to give your opinion to us. So I don't know that we won't get the opinions. We just felt that at least for the purpose of the ad hoc committee, it was to try to get sort of the average point of view, for lack of a better way to say it, or
well, I consider myself to be pretty average, that's for sure. But again, you might have had some former city councilors being involved in this process, but given that it was only every 10 years, not every city council was involved in this type of process before. And seeing how it's going back to the city councilors, I mean, ultimately, you guys will make the decision. You said it yourself, Sarah. You might listen to this ad hoc committee and you might not, right? And so at the end of the day, it is very political, which is unfortunate, okay? And I quite frankly don't think the city council should have the final say in drawing their own lines if we have to draw them. And so it's important to have an individual who is open-minded, accessible to the public, knows the neighborhoods, because ultimately this isn't about Democrats, Republicans, Independent, Progressives. This is about fair representation for the entire city, but particularly for us in the New North End. And so I was disappointed that I thought the resolution really was written in a way where it excluded ex-city councilors and school board members. And I think some of those individuals could be your best asset.
I guess I would add, Dave, that, I agree that some of the ex or former city councilor and school board members are some of the people with a lot of requisite knowledge around city politics, around previous redistricting attempts. You know, this resolution took a while to craft, and there were a lot of opinions on how a redistricting process should work. Some of those opinions were to not include, they didn't necessarily include the NPA. So, you know, I know that Sarah and I both wanted the NPAs involved. Other people wanted some other things. This was, you know, a consensus resolution from a number of interests, let's say. So this is the one that we have, and this is the one that we're working with, and those are the rules.
Do you want to ask a question?
Well, I had one question answered already. However, there's, other than districting the lines, and it would decide how many counselors in each district. What else would be good about this? I mean, because would one district have more city councilors chosen or not?
I mean, I think ultimately it's looking at recommendations on the number of counselors and the number of districts. So that's probably fairly fundamental. And then the subtext is where the line, if the consensus is to keep wards and districts, then where the lines go is going to be sort of a secondary. But that's what we're trying to affirm. I mean, really, we in the city of Burlington, and I grew up here, assume that we have to have wards, as just one example. There are tons of cities where councils run at large. I'm not picking that as a position. I'm just saying, you know, is that something we would want to consider? You know, we've had 6 and we've had 7 and now we've got 8 wards, you know, 6, 7 or 8, which, you know, let's think about that. We have the wards in the district. So it's just looking, you know, what are the configurations that kind of make the sense for us in 2022? You know, there's no magic probably to any one of those. It's, you know, what are you thinking? You got some better thoughts? I mean, the city's grown a lot, particularly in the last 20 years. And so how does that influence, you know, lines and decisions on numbers of councilors and numbers of wards and numbers of districts?
Can you give me an example of a benefit other than redistricting the lines? What could change? I mean, what could really change that would benefit the community or the people that are living in that district?
Well, one thing I would say would be that we have very different areas of the city with different neighborhood interests. The new North End is a different place than the old North End with different issues and interests. the populations are different. And so we want, are those, keeping those neighborhood interests intact important? So that's something. Polling places is another. The last time we did redistricting, we were able to keep polling places intact for the most part. So so that's also something. It could be, and then like Sarah said, the number of counselors. Is our council too small? Is it too big? What do people have feelings about that? Maybe they don't care, and that would be good to know as well. So I do, once we have the committee constituted, there will be an orientation, and there will be, like I say, a little bit of guidance there. So to help sort of define the work, but it's going to be more of what we talked about tonight. But the committee may also have, members of the committee may also have ideas about how they'd like the process to go. So we do want this to be we want there to be a certain amount of independence to this process, and have it be community driven.
Well, that's one of the reasons we didn't want current or former councilors and elected officials on it, because we want you to think broadly. And I don't perceive dramatic changes, but even little things like, do we really need 8 polling places? For instance, is there any reason 4 and 7 can't vote together in the same facility? That's not but that actually is a charter change, believe it or not. So, so there'll be some smaller things that could come out of this that I think are trying to make it easier for the voters.
I'm going to keep this rolling if those questions are answered. We're about a half an hour behind. I've got 3 more lined up that have been patient, so I'm going to keep rolling. The Coopers, Cliff and Ellen, you're next.
Yeah, am I on there?
You are.
Okay, 2 questions. One is that the numbers that were given out, the increase in population is approximately 5%, which is semi-significant. And I don't think you can do anything in the powers that be to move anything until after September 30th, where you find out, is it Ward 4 that got 1,200 of those new people because of Cambrian Rise? Or is it the South End because new businesses and buildings were built there? You have to wait until you get your numbers in before you can make any explanations on anything. So September 30th, when the census trickles down to the numbers that you need, that's when you have to really focus in on what you have to figure out. The other thing is Ward 8 got put in somewhere along the line without me knowing about it, without most people knowing about it. And kind of how did that happen without any people thinking about it? And the last thing is, I don't think you should discriminate about any voting public in the city of Burlington to be on any committee at any time, or any NPA, just because now Martine's on there. She was with the school board, so she can't go on there, but she has nothing to do with the voting. I mean, Dave Hartnett's on here. He has a wealth of knowledge of, I don't even know how many years he's been on the council, but that's valuable information that you would need in a committee. You don't want to get people that are 5-year-olds in kindergarten lined up to be part of this committee and then sit there and have no really background knowledge about what goes on and how it goes on. And I would also suggest that you would look back 10 years ago when they redistrict, or why didn't they redistrict, and find out what the population change was there and how that demographic goes into the part of the whole package. But nothing can be done till 9:30 on any of this, as far as I can see it.
Well, if I'm going to disagree and say, we can look at things like the number of wards and the number of counselors today.
Not unless you have numbers.
Well, we can. If there was not one more person in the city of Burlington, we can change that. So we're asking, what's your thinking? Redistricting is not just about population change. If any one ward has a population shift of, I believe it's 10%, then we need to look at the lines. But whether we want 9 counselors, 12 counselors, 14 counselors, 16 counselors is really kind of irrelevant of the number of people. That's a more philosophical perspective. And we're just asking for people to confirm, you know, what do you think about any or all of those options? And whether then, if you say, okay, we only want 11 counselors, then you'd have to draw the lines to make sure each 11 neighborhood had the same amount of people. But if you want 16 counselors, you draw the neighborhoods a little bit different. But you really need a bigger picture before you then draw the lines.
I would say, Cliff, that I do think we'll have the numbers. The committee is getting constituted, you know, at the end of September anyways. It's very likely that we'll have that data at the time the committee sits. And if we don't, it's coming sort of right on the tail of that. The second thing was around redistricting. There was a big redistricting effort back in, I think ultimately we voted in 2014 on the 2010 census change. And we were required to redistrict then because of the growth in population in the university area. And that is the thing that necessitated, or at least was the reason Ward 8 came into being. And that's also been one of these areas where people, you know, like districts, people are saying, what about Ward 8? And they scratch their head about it and look at the way it's shaped or whatever. But, you know, these are things that are, you know, obviously what was done out of necessity. It was a process that took a while to sort of sort out. I think it took almost 2 years. And so we're trying to get ahead of it now as well. That's another reason we're sort of trying to jump in early so that we can make any necessary changes. And then again, I'll go back to your point about the exclusion of counselors and school board members, current and former, is a point well taken. Like I said, this is the resolution that we have, and the one that we forged out of, it took a month or so to forge this thing, and a lot of discussion. So.
Let me keep moving. Deb Booten.
Thank you. I actually have 3 questions that I think can be answered with yes or no's, honestly, so don't freak out. Just to clarify a few things. So we're only looking at within the city of Burlington, affecting the council, and nothing to do with state representative.
Right.
Okay, all right, that's good. Will there be a budget for the different areas? Like, say, our ward wanted to send a mailing to everyone. Do you know, will there be a budget that would allow something like that to happen, or do you know?
We do not have, to my knowledge, a special budget, but we have talked to the CEDO office, and they're committed to providing support. It would be up for the 8-person committee to express what they want. We are presuming they'll act as a committee as a whole. So, for example, if all 8 people insist they wanted a mailing, that isn't getting a lot of comfort, but I think there's a commitment to try to make something work that all 8 people decide they.
Okay. Thanks, Sarah. And then, so just to clarify in my head, if we learn that, well, I'm in Ward 7, so if we learn that we need to add or subtract people in our ward, then clearly the person representing this ward has work to do. If we learn that we don't have any addition or subtraction, does that mean we don't do anything, but no, or that we have a voice on the larger group? Okay.
And again, it's important to understand, because whether the line is the railroad track or the tunnel or the high school isn't relevant quite at this point in time. It's really like Marcus expressed, we have 2 counselors and 1 district council. So does that stick or not stick? Or do we want to go back to 2 and 2? Or do we want smaller wards or bigger wards, you know, and I think it's more like that. And then, you know, in affirming important things, we believe neighborhoods are important, but, you know, maybe, as I said, some communities do it different. Is incumbency important? I mean, we've talked about politics, and one of the reasons elected officials are not on this is we want to not have we want the community lens, not the elected officials lens.
Right, okay. Okay, so thank you for that. Those are my questions, but I have one comment, and that is that I think the process is really good theoretically. And yet if the committee is, or the advisory committee, whatever it's called, is going to be made up of the quote winners from each ward, it's very possible, and frankly, maybe very likely, that the whole committee is made up of white men, no offense to the males in the audience, or white people. And to me, that's a problem. I feel like whatever comes, this broader committee has to show some diversity in our makeup of our population. And so I would just suggest, and I don't know what the solution is, but maybe if the council could even look at, there are the runner-up from each ward, I don't know, just to make sure that ultimately the committee itself is representative of our people who live here. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Deb. We're really running late. I've got 2 more hands up. I'm going to go quickly to Robert Bristow Johnson.
So I'm just going to say very quickly that in response to Jeffrey Cooper, I know a bit about the history about how this was happening. It was 8 years ago, because things kind of got started late and they took on a long time because there was a pretty big north-south dispute about what would be a good map, because in any capacity, whether I'm on the committee or not, I'd be happy to serve as a resource person to tell you what we were arguing about back 8 years ago, and how the Ward 8, how the 8 ward map came to be. There is a story behind that, and I think I know it. And it might be colored by my own opinion, but I think I know the facts, and I think I know how to separate facts from just my own opinion. So if we ever get into that, I'm offer my services.
Thanks.
Let me go now to Jeff and Nancy Comstock.
Hi, I strongly agree with Cliff that Dave should have the opportunity to serve on this ad hoc committee. I don't know why someone who moved here just last week or last month or whatever would have more of a right or be more valuable to this ad hoc committee than someone like Dave Hartnett, who has a history of Burlington and the New North End in particular. I think that he and any past city councilor or school board member should definitely be allowed to be part of this ad hoc committee if they so choose. So I guess my question is, why does someone who moved here last week have more of a right to be on this committee than the Dave Hartnett's?
As Mark explained, the resolution was somewhat of a compromise. The resolution is passed. It was the consensus.
That doesn't make it right.
Well, but I'm just saying there's, at this point, there's not a choice. I think it'll be up to the committee of 8 to solicit opinions. I mean, they are certainly can pull together former counselors and have a focus group with them. I mean, none of that is prohibited, but as it stands now, it was the consensus of the council that we wanted opinions from people who were not in elected office. And
Please
that
take
is
note of my opinion then.
Well, I appreciate that. And I would agree with you. And if I was going to craft this on my own in a vacuum, I certainly wouldn't put that restriction in there, because I understand and value the sort of knowledge, the learned knowledge that a lot of our former elected officials may have. Others saw it differently. And so this is the resolution that was passed. This is the one that has to guide the work right now. And I mean, if we were going to create a different committee at a different time, we certainly could take that up. But I don't know how to undo that right now. You know what I mean?
I appreciate that. And that's why we voted for you, Mark. So thank you.
I would say, if I could throw in, I don't know if anybody can hear me, but I would say that it would be someone who's been here for a couple of weeks or a couple of months would be real hard pressed to win the representation on the committee. That's all I would say to that. You know,
Matt, Lee Terhune is raising their physical hand.
I'm sorry, Kristen, I couldn't understand what you just said.
I said Lee is raising her hand.
Oh, I'm sorry. Then please, Mia, go.
I wanted to follow up on what Deb said, and on 2 points. One is, when it comes to having a diverse ad hoc committee, that's really up to us who are voting tonight. If we vote on 2 white men, then that's, you know, that's our choice. We do have a different choice, and maybe we can think about that.
Thank you, Lee. Martine, do I see a hand?
I was just going to say, I hope we can move on to the next thing at this point, but I did want to say a quick thank you to Deb Booten for bringing up the issue of representation. Thank you.
And I'm going to move on. We're 45 minutes over. We should be at 7:20 and we're at 8:06. So
We're such an engaged group. That's why.
well, it is. And
Good, right?
Good, that's good.
have been awesome. And I came to this meeting without much knowledge of the process. And I feel that I've just taken a sip from a fire hydrant. So thank you all for your questions. But I'm going to move on to our agenda item for 7:20 p.m., which is nominations of the ad hoc committees and representatives. And because I have a simple little male brain, I'm going to start with the lowest number, which is Ward 4, and open the floor to the residents of Ward 4 present at this meeting to bring forth your nominations. And I don't know if somebody wants to yell or raise their hand. I just saw a hand raised by Jim.
Are you taking self-nominations?
We are taking self-nominations and we are taking nominations of someone.
Okay. Well, I'd like to put my name in the hat for this.
Perfect.
And then will we get a chance to say why we think this would be good?
Yeah, I have, going off my script, nominations first, and then we're going to go after both wards have received nominations back to each nominee and ask them to speak for a few moments about why they're interested, and then it'll be opened up to the public for questions. So I have Jim Hallway for the first nomination for Ward 4. I see more hands. The top of my screen is Lee Terhune.
What ward is Deb Booten in?
in 7.
Ward 7.
Well, I hope somebody nominates you, Deb. I'd like to nominate Ellen Cooper.
Perfect. Thank you, Lee. And I have a hand up at Miller Center, CETO, so Kirsten.
Oh, yeah, that's, I guess now it's been made. Sorry, our nomination was just made here in this room, so you don't speak.
You do not have a nomination? No, okay. I see no new hands.
Can I ask a question? Are you allowed, can I nominate you, Matt, or is that something because you're on the NPA, you're not allowed to be part of it?
Right.
Because you're kind of an elected official because you were part of it. if you go across the whole panel here, there are so many people that are involved in the community that have all these different affiliations. How do you know who you can nominate and who you can't?
You can nominate Matt.
How do you know?
Right, you're in Ward
NPA,
4.
NPA
Can't, he's
According
Ward
to the-
4.
According to the resolution, you can.
No.
I guess so. I don't know.
So just to be clear, we're not elected officials on the steering committee.
True, technically we're not, but technically Cliff, you're in Ward 4, so you can't nominate me. As I understand it, but thank you. If that were the case, I'd nominate you. I see no other hands in front of me, but I don't want to miss anybody.
Jim Hallway.
Oh, I see a few new ones now. I see Olivia Mylans.
Hey, I'm from Ward 7. I'd like to nominate Deb Booton.
Can we wait till Ward 7? We're not.
Oh,
Yeah, we're still on, I'm sorry, I should have been more clear. We're on Ward 4. Are there
okay.
other?
Okay, I'll wait.
That's okay. I'll come right back to you in just a moment, Olivia. Are there any other nominations for Ward 4?
I'm seeing someone waving on the Cooper screen. Did you want to say anything?
Ellen?
You're muted, Ellen.
Muted.
Okay, I was wondering, the man that was speaking about knowing the knowledge of the 8 years ago when they redistrict, what ward is he in?
7.
That
Okay,
is
so
Robert.
then I
Eason.
nominate Jeff Clark.
Because he doesn't have enough to do.
Does Jeff Clark want to be nominated?
I don't want to.
I thought people would nominate themselves, so I wasn't clear that we were nominating others.
Yeah, because
Oh,
okay.
okay. I didn't know the rule.
Well, maybe I can go down the list. Jim Hallway nominated himself. Ellen Cooper, did you self-nominate or did someone else nominate you?
No,
Do
I
you
didn't
accept-
self-nominate.
Okay.
She was nominated by Lee Terhune.
Oh, okay, that's right. So maybe it's appropriate to ask Ellen Cooper, do you accept the nomination?
I guess, yes, but I wasn't planning on it, but I would.
Well, this is your lucky night.
Yeah.
Well, if they're interested, then as a Ward 4 resident, I would nominate Lee Terhune if she is actually interested in accepting that nomination.
Lee Terhune, do you accept the nomination?
I accept the nomination. What ward is Evan in?
I'm in Ward 4.
I would like to nominate Evan.
I have to politely decline the nomination. I am on too many committees.
Thank you, Evan. So before we move on and close the nominations for Ward 4, have I missed anyone? Is there anyone that can't make their hand raised that can unmute and speak? I'll give you 5 or 10 seconds. I'm hearing no one. Going once, going twice. All right, so I will open the,
Sorry, Matt, we just had someone else, a new person join the meeting, so I just wanted to give them the opportunity to
okay.
speak on this if they wanted to.
Are they in your room physically or someone that joined?
Just join Zoom, there's a Annie Lawson.
Okay.
Annie, can you tell us which ward you're in?
Hi, thanks. I'm sorry that I'm late. I'm in Ward 4 and I'm just tuning in, but I really appreciate just hearing that this was so thorough that someone noticed a latecomer and wanted to give them a chance to chime in. Thanks for that.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Kirsten.
And so Annie, just for your benefit, we just nominated 4 folks from Ward 4. And since you're a Ward 4 resident, were you planning on nominating anyone before we move to a vote on those folks or before they get to speak?
I was not, but I really appreciate checking in.
Thanks.
You're welcome. So I will move on and open the floor to Ward 7 for nominations to the ad hoc committee, and I will start with Olivia Mylans. Olivia, you're muted.
No, I nominate Deb Booton.
Deb Booton,
Thank you.
do you accept the nomination?
Yeah, I think I would, sure.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next on my screen are the Comstocks, Jeff and Nancy.
I nominate Matt Holber.
I have to decline your nomination. As flattered as I am on too many committees and too stretched with my current career.
Then I nominate Jeff Comstock.
Jeff Comstock, do you accept the nomination?
I'm gonna say yes, just for,
All right.
see how this goes. Yes. I will accept.
I might be sleeping in the backyard tonight.
Yes. He doesn't dare not. Thank you, Nancy, for the nomination. I am honored. Robert Bristow Johnson.
I'm self-nominating. There's nobody here to nominate me.
Excellent. That's perfectly fine. I have 3 nominations. Is there anyone else in the meeting that would like to nominate another Ward 7 candidate? Seeing no hands. I don't want to rush because of technology.
I don't see any hands.
No, I don't. So we're going to close nominations. So this is a pretty good horse race. We have 3 nominations for Ward 4 and 3 nominations for Ward 7. So next on our agenda is a nominee introduction and a qualification interest statement. So I think we have enough time for maybe 2 or 3 minutes each. So I'm just going to go down my list for no reason other than organization in the order in which I received nominations. So Jim Hallway, you were first on that list. So talk to us for a couple minutes.
Right. Thank you. Well, I feel like since I was on the committee last time, was involved in the redistricting, studied redistricting, not only for Burlington's history, but redistricting as a whole. There are many dynamics, some great questions already raised about how it works and that sort of a thing. So I feel like I have some experience in understanding how that is. So given that, yes, the data will be in by the 30th, and that's even though it is only 5.1% difference between but gain, that doesn't actually mean it's not 10%. So we don't know if it's going to be true or not. So I understand the math stuff of it. I understand the political, geopolitical dynamics of it. And I, having been a ward clerk for 7 years, know the community very well. I think that good at consensus building, good at working with different people. I'm a independent, politically aligned as an independent. So trying to stay away from, and that's ward clerk here. You have to be politically neutral as best as you can in a public way. So I'm a non-activist per se. I want to hear what people have to say and what's important to them. So I hope that you give me a consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate it. Next on the list is Ellen Cooper.
Well, I thank Lee for nominating me, but I mean, I've lived in Burlington for tons of years, since 1976, out here in the New North End since 88, in the same house, but I would be more than happy to be part of the group, open-minded, trying to see what's best for everybody. I've always tried to play a fair game, and I think that would, be good, but Jim has a lot more experience than I do.
Is that all, Ellen?
Yep, that's it.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And Lee Terhune.
Well, I nominated Ellen because she's a really strong person and nobody will push her around and she'll defend the New North End. I will too. Those of you who know me know that I will speak up. I will inform myself. I will read. I will prepare. I will ask questions. And I will ask the NPA to give us a half an hour at their meetings where people will tell me how they feel about the various options that are being discussed at the committee. I will represent you strongly and I will represent you honestly. I will go to every meeting. I will prepare for every meeting. And I'm fascinated by the options. We've really got some good options out there. Oh, and I've lived here for 18 years, but I also lived here in the 60s on North Avenue. I'm really bonded to the new North End.
Thank you, Lee. I'm going to move to the nominees for Ward 7.
Matt, is Jeff Clark still on the list?
No.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jeff. I did
No.
hear you. Did you?
No,
rescind?
I said that I thought you nominated yourself, so I didn't know
Oh,
you
I'm sorry.
nominated another person, so I'm not nominated.
We're trying to get you another hat. I'll move to Ward 7, and the first on my list for Ward 7 is Deb Booten.
Well, thank you, Muffy, for the nomination. I was thinking about, I've lived in Vermont. We moved to Winooski from DC in 1985, moved to the New North End in Ward 7 in 1990. While I was in Winooski, I served as the representative in Winooski for recycling for what was to become the Chittenden Solid Waste District. I served on the Burlington Ward for voter registration for 10 years. I've worked at the polls. I served on the advisory committee for what is now the Miller Center. And I've been very involved in community events and parks and rec programs while my kids were in school. About 10 years ago, I took a job at Johnson State College and lived out of town. So my involvement really went, and so I have been slowly getting back into involvement here. I would very much bring an independent, open-minded point of view. Politically, I'm an independent. I vote for people in every party. I think it's crucial to make sure it's fair. But I do want to come back to the issue. I mean, if we had someone here who was on this platform who was more diverse, I would withdraw because I just think that's really important. But anyway, that's what I would bring to the group. And thank you again.
Thank you, Deb. Next on the list is Jeff Comstock.
Yes, as I currently serve on the NPA steering committee, so there is a hat there. I have been involved with this resolution and the NPA as part of the NPA planning process, bringing this resolution forward and establishing the ad hoc. So I've been working with the other wards throughout the city to get this resolution in place and working at the NPA level. I am interested in this short-term project because I feel that it really does overlap in a very interesting way with my role as an inspector of election in Ward 4. So I feel like there's Ward 7, I'm sorry, yeah. So I feel like there's a sort of an interesting bridge of subject matter here that I would be very interested to pursue. And as a side note, part of my major motivation for being involved in the NPA is the issue of trying to create an engaged and informed electorate has been at the theme of pretty much everything I've tried to do as far as engagement in the community. And I'm particularly, I want to say, irritated with some of the calls for diversity here, and the veiled criticism of the lack of diversity in this process. Even, for example, when how can you have engagement when people don't show up? And so I have a very short fuse for criticisms of lack of diversity when other folks simply choose not to engage. And so that's a sore spot for me, but that's, yeah, we'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. And we'll go on to Robert Bristow Johnson.
Okay, so I guess the only qualification that I bring to this is that I was pretty active in it 8 years ago. I was the person who drew the map that we now have. I also drew another map. If it's okay, I'd like to show you just a little bit. This was the first map that I drew, and it became downtown. It became this map. This is the version 1 map, and you'll see that Ward 8 doesn't look quite like it does now because there was a problem with it that Edmund School, which was in Ward 6, ended up in Ward 8. And so this map was drawn by me later, and there was a vote in City Council between these two maps, and this version 3 map is what ended up on the ballot. This is how the previous Ward 7 lines were compared to what we got with the 8 ward map. And basically my intent was to preserve the wards as much as possible. And I think I succeeded at that because 82% of the city got to stay in the same ward and vote at the same place. And of the 18% that didn't, 13% was this Ward 8. So they're not going to. Only 5% of the city ended up in one of the 7 wards and ended up in another one of the 7 wards. Some of that was this part here, Lakeview Terrace, that went back into Ward 3. That used to be Ward 7, along with now it's Cambrian Rise. There's only 12 people there. That used to also be in Ward 7. There was this little Spruce Court corner that went back into Ward 6, along with everything else that is east of St. Paul. And there's this little block right here that went back into Ward 1, along with everything else that was in that was east of Willard. Some lines got straightened out here a little bit, but for the most part, the wards stayed the same, and that was after redistricting, which I think is what got people satisfied with it, because the other maps did have a kind of a radical change. And there's a story behind what happened with the other ones. So I got to figure out how to stop sharing the screen, and I'll do that now. I don't know how to do that. Is there some way that I can?
Yeah.
There. All right, that's it.
Thank you, Robert. So we've heard from all 6 candidates, which means we move on to the question and answer dialogue session. And I have to remind everybody it's 8:27. So in the interest of time, there's not a lot of time for discussion. I don't think it'll be a terribly tedious process to cast and count votes. But I do want to move along. So let's go back to Ward 4 because their number is the first number. Are there any questions from the members of Ward 4 on this meeting that have questions for any of the 3 candidates, Jim Holloway, Ellen Cooper, or Lee Thierry? I'm not seeing any hands. Am I missing anybody? No, I see no waving. So I will move on to Ward 7. Are there any residents of Ward 7 on this meeting that have questions for either Deb Booten, Jeff Comstock, or Robert Bristow?
Question from Jeff Comstock.
I see Jeff Comstock's hand.
Yes, I have a question for Robert, and I want to start by acknowledging that I respect your vast knowledge with the subject matter and expertise here. I mean, what I would most like to consider for you is are you prepared to be a good, thoughtful listener in this process, and then save your expertise for later in the process when the actual, if any revisions need to be made? So I'm sort of curious for you to share your perspective on how you would approach this on the front end, Robert.
Well, I understand sometimes it's I don't seem to be a very good listener because sometimes when something is suggested that it can't work, we're going to have constraints. We're going to have to fit the 10% rule. We're going to have other things that just can't budge, and often I'll understand that, like when a suggestion is made that might just be unfeasible and completely unfeasible, that I might point that out right away so that we don't spend too much time on it. I do think that I can listen. I do try to listen, but sometimes there's these hard brute facts that they don't listen, and if I'm aware of them, I think we should save time about it and not spend time on something that can't work because of it. Say it doesn't fit the 10% rule or something like that.
Okay, thank you.
I see a hand from Marisol.
Hi, I think this question is really for, I'm from Ward 7, so I guess this would go to just the Ward 7 candidates. But I guess it's not directed at any one, but I guess all three, because most of what I thought I heard from the city council members was that this process was about public engagement and that everyone's opinion and input mattered equally. What I felt like I heard in actually all the candidates' justification for their expertise came back to how long anyone had lived in the area. And I think, while I can respect other people's opinions in terms of diversity, I think when you are in Vermont and in Burlington, and if that is going to be a really important criteria to someone being qualified for the position, you're automatically limiting their scope. And I guess I would I would hope that the candidates are going to be willing to listen equally to the members of the community and not weigh the input based on how long they've been here. Because it did seem to be a really big focus of the conversation tonight.
Anyone want to comment? Directed to Deb, Jeff, or Robert.
Hi, thank you for that, Marcella. I thought that was a good comment. I reluctantly right now, I'm realizing that I need to withdraw from the nomination. I need to withdraw my nomination just from work commitments, and I have to be out of town. I apologize for wasting people's time, but yeah, I need to withdraw. Appreciate the nomination, Muffy. Thank you.
Quitter. Yeah, chuckle, chuckle.
Thank you, Deb.
So, we're stuck with then just a bunch of guys.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
there you go.
Don't withdraw.
So I guess I would like to respond to Marciela, and that perhaps some of my remarks were perceived as harsh, but the point I was trying to make is that the purpose of my community service is generating engagement. And as far as I'm concerned, there are no equity boundaries on what I consider engagement. So I don't know what you may have think you heard me say, but from my perspective, my boundaries on engagement are wide open and require participation as a two-way street. So.
Okay.
Did you wish to respond, Robert?
I mean, I don't know what it's hard for me to apologize for being a middle-aged white male. And I've found myself forced to do that in other contexts.
I
know.
I'm sorry. I don't think I even raised that point. I was talking about time living in the community and sort of being
Okay.
there. So
I'm sorry.
I think people are misinterpreting what I
displaced.
said or sort
Sorry.
of trying to make this into something that it wasn't.
My apologies. I screwed up. I conflated the issues. I'm only a 21st century Vermonter. I am not a 20th century Vermonter. So
Yeah, I guess
I
my
can say.
point is that if there's this desire for community engagement, that, you know, you have to make it a welcoming place for the community and not just the people that have been talking to you for the last 25 years. So I think that's the point I wanted to make, is that there are people out there who want to engage, but when they show up, you can't make them feel like an outsider if you actually want them to come back.
Yep, I agree.
I see a hand raised by Annie Lawson.
I just want to add, Annie is a resident of Ward 4, and so this might not be the time for Annie to ask a question.
We'll come back, Annie, and do a go back. Next on my list with a hand up is Tom Fleury.
Actually, I don't know if I'm out of order or not. I don't really have a question, but I have a comment, and that is to support Maricella's remark about asking our two candidates. We formerly had 3 good candidates. I've worked with all 3 of them, and now we have 2 good candidates. And I think she was perfectly in order to ask whoever is elected from or selected from Ward 4 or 7 to please do look at it from an equity lens, because I think that's important, regardless of whom we select tonight and who is serving across the city. That I think it's imperative, because we are a changing city, that we do look at it through an equity lens. I don't think she asked anybody to apologize for who they are, but just to be open about who other people are and the fact that our city is vastly changing, and our work should do that. So I just offer, you know, all 3 of the former candidates have great qualifications and are good listeners. I've worked with all of them, and are also warmly welcoming the diverse people who come to our polls in Ward 7. So I personally don't have an issue with anybody's background or qualifications or ability to be inclusive or listen, but I do want to really support Maricella's comment about an equity lens. Not only our North End people, but all city people really look through when we do this important work. And I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Tom. Does anybody want to respond? Jeff or Robert?
No, thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
All good.
And I saw a hand up, but it's gone. Has everyone asked their questions for Ward 7? Seeing no new hands, then I'm going to go back to Annie Lawson, and we'll do a question for Ward 4. Shaking your heads. Do you have a question, Annie?
I'm sorry, were you inviting me to speak at this point?
Yes, you would raise your hand for a question.
Yeah,
These
well, it actually was also in reference to Marcella's comment. I just wanted to make space for her to be able to clarify, because what she said also to me sounded very different than what people responded to, but I'm glad that she was able to get in there and clarify that herself. I didn't want things to proceed without a chance for that clarification.
Thank you. So I am going to move on to the next agenda item, which is the election for the ad hoc representative. And we will start numerically with Ward number 4. And as I said we would do in the very beginning, I and the other steering committee members have just a list from roll call, so I'm going to go down that list and ask each individual to turn on their camera when the name is called and cast their vote for either Jim Hallway, Ellen Cooper, or Lee Terhune. And the first on the list is Dave Hartnett.
Ellen Cooper.
Thank you, Dave. Lynn Bundy. Lynn Bundy.
Do you have something you'd like to vote for? Or would you like to vote for someone for Ward 4? For the ad hoc?
Thank you.
Lynn has a,
I did not hear your vote, Lynn.
Lynn just shared that she wanted to abstain her vote.
Okay, that's fine. Lee Terhune.
Ellen Cooper.
Jeff Clark.
Jim Hallway.
Jim Hallway.
I nominate or vote for Ellen Cooper because diversity isn't just about the skin color, and also diversity is experience. And so I think that Ellen, if you would like support and you win this, then I'm happy to be supportive. That's what I shared with the NPA before we started.
Thank you, Jim. Burgett Bozick. And if I pronounced your name wrong, I'm sorry.
I am so torn. I'll vote for Jim Holloway. One of the reasons is because Ellen Cooper suggested that Jim Holloway would be a great candidate. I admire both of them.
Thank you, Burgett. Next on my list is Cliff Cooper.
I would vote for Ellen. In fear.
Wise man. Ellen Cooper.
I would vote for Jim Holloway.
Sarah Carpenter.
I'm going to abstain. Remember, you may want to get rid of my position.
So noted. Evan Litwin.
I'm going to keep my vote for Lee Terhune since I nominated her. Thank you.
Thank you, Evan. Bob Hooper.
Jim Hallway.
Mark Barlow.
I'm also going to abstain.
Martine Gulick.
I would like to say I'm not 100% comfortable with this process. I wish we could vote anonymously. I think
I do apologize.
I think all three of these people would do a wonderful job. Two of these people are friends of mine, but I am going to vote in the name of gender diversity, and she's my friend and my neighbor, so I'm going to vote for Ellen.
Thank you, Martine. Eric Corbman.
I'll vote for Jim Hallway.
Karen Corbman.
Holloway.
Annie Lawson.
I'll vote for Lee Terhune.
That concludes my list from roll call and additions that are known. So I will ask, are there any members of the community from Ward 4 on this call that did not just cast a vote that would like to cast a vote? Have I missed anyone? Seeing no hands. So steering committee, do you want to tally votes as we go for each ward, or should we move on to 7 and then come back. And
I
talk.
just tallied votes, so if that's helpful, let's just
I'm gonna just
check
do-
mark Ward 4 as being done.
let's
So
do
my
that.
tally, if anyone wants to correct me, was that Jim has 7 votes and Ellen has 5, and Lee has 2, and the rest were abstentions.
Evan, I have Jim Hallway at 6.
Okay, let me double check. Two, three,
I
four,
have
five,
Jim
six.
Hallway at
Yes,
6.
you're right. You're right.
Ellen Cooper
Thank
at
you.
5. And
This
Lee-
is why we have multiple people doing this.
No hanging chads in this.
And I don't have to use the random number generator, so thank you all.
That's all that I wanted. So we are in consensus that Jim Hallway is elected as the nominee for Ward 4 ad hoc. And I will move on to Ward 7. And I'm going to go down the list for Ward 7 in the order that I wrote them down. So the first on my list, Jeff Comstock.
I'm going to vote for Robert Bristow Johnson.
Nancy Comstock.
I think Ward 7 will be best served by either of them. It would be nice to have more time with my husband not involved in these meetings, so I'm going to vote for RBJ.
I am third on the list and I don't know how to vote. We had 3 amazing candidates. I'm so impressed by the turnout for volunteer. I think both candidates are great. I, like Martine, hate how this is happening. I will vote for Jeff Comstock. Steve Hamlin.
I vote for Jeff Comstock.
Thank you, Steve. Robert Bristow Johnson.
I'm going to abstain.
I almost abstained. Olivia Taylor.
I will vote for Jeff Comstock.
Olivia Mylans.
Robert Bristol Johnson.
Thank you, Olivia. Maricela.
Robert Bristow Johnson.
Thank you, Marcela. Tom Fleury.
I admire and trust them both and abstain.
Thank you. Deb Booten.
Yeah, I have a hard time on this one as well. I think I'm going to abstain.
So noted. Ellie Dane.
I go with Robert.
Thank you, Ellie. And that concludes my list from introduction at the beginning of the meeting. So I will ask, are there any other members of the Ward 7 neighborhood that have not voted that would like to vote? Seeing no hands. Give you a minute. I'm seeing no hands. I believe that means everybody has voted. So I'm going to count. My tally shows 3 votes for Jeff Comstock, 5 votes for Robert Bristow Johnson.
Yes.
Is
I
that,
confirm that.
you have Evan?
I agree.
Jeff, were you counting?
Yep.
And is that accurate?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so
I concur also. Yep.
Yeah, I had the same also.
you do, thank you. So that concludes our vote. So Robert, you have been nominated for ad hoc committee for Ward 7. So congratulations to both. And I have to just again reiterate, it was hard to vote for anybody because everybody was very highly qualified. And I really am impressed and grateful for the turnout for the meeting and the turnout for those willing to serve. And it's going to
Thank
be.
you so much for the facilitation. Good facilitation.
Thank you.
Yeah. Great
Matt,
job,
I
Matt.
think Jim has his hand up, Jim Hallway.
Oh, Jim, you do, please.
Well, thank you for the votes, but after we're done with this, can I make a community announcement?
Yes, you can. I have one more hand up, so we'll come back to you in just a moment. Deb Booten, your hand is up.
I just wanted to say, I thought you did a great job for drinking out of a fire hose.
Thank you.
I thought you really kept it going very smoothly. So thank you.
Not an expert, but thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And Matt,
for
actually, just before we move on to community announcements, I just want to remind that we have a new potential NPA steering committee member
Thank
with
you.
us tonight.
Thank you for that. Would anyone from Ward 7 like to nominate a new member?
I have to go, folks. I'll see you later. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it.
I'll nominate
Go say.
Olivia Taylor.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Tom. Any abstain? Any disagree?
All those in favor of.
Those in favor?
No, I was given an opportunity to say something when I was on, so I wonder if Olivia might like the
where,
opportunity or not, but.
The greenhorn is showing through. Olivia, why don't you say something?
I'll make it very short because this has been long and I know everyone will appreciate that. I've been in Burlington on and off for 10 years, but in the New North End for like 3 years, randomly back and forth. But I've really learned to love it. And I'm on the housing board with Evan and just looking to get more involved and do more things in Burlington. So I appreciate it.
Thanks for joining.
Matt?
Yes.
I'm just a sidebar, but do we still need NPA members or are there?
We do.
Yes.
Our NPA is a skeleton of now 5 with Olivia. Jenna is number 6, but she is taking a little bit of time off. She's going to come back and join us when she's full steam, probably next year.
Do we
So
need them on both?
We
4
do.
and 7?
We do on 4 and 7.
If Olivia joins us, Sarah, if that goes through, which I hope it will, we would be evenly matched now with 3 and 3 people, which is nice to have that balance, but it's obviously a very small amount of people.
And just
I'm just gonna say, and maybe I see some people participating this evening that might make very good NPA members.
Oddly enough, have good notes.
So
I didn't want to put anybody on the spot.
If you don't want to volunteer this minute, I would encourage you to volunteer.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Sarah, just as a follow-up, so right now, as Evan said, it looks like we are 3 and 3 for Ward 4 and 7, and we actually have 9. The steering committee is allocated 9 people per ward, so there's definitely an opportunity for several more people to get involved, and we would gladly welcome the help.
Absolutely.
I hope to be nominating Deb Boughton in the future.
If she's still on, you can nominate her now.
She has her hand raised.
Is that, yes, Deb, your hand is raised, and I think that might have been a nomination.
Sorry, I didn't mean to raise my hand. I just
That's okay.
hit the
Put
wrong
you on the
button.
spot.
Rookie mistake, rookie mistake.
Was that a nomination, Tom?
Yes, I would make that a nomination.
So Deb, the hot seat to you. Do you accept the nomination to join Ward 7 and 4 steering committee?
I would like to say yes, but I need to know a little bit more about that commitment. And the reason I say that is as I was, we were going through this process, I got a text from my daughter reminding me of some things and anyway, and work life and all of that. But I would say tentative yes.
Okay. And we can communicate back.
Yeah,
If you-
that'd be great. Thank you.
Or someone knows your email where you can email us.
Yeah, thanks, Tom.
Appreciate the involvement tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. I hope you're still speaking to me after this, Deb, but you,
You're in trouble, Tom. We know where to find you on the weekends. We'll bring a donation. Are there any other hands? No, I'm going to then turn the floor to Jim Hallway with a community announcement.
Is Olivia on? Did we approve?
Oh, we didn't finalize. I'm sorry. I'm just like
It's sleepy time. It's 9 o'clock.
5. I'm sorry. I've got to have dinner after this.
Robert's giving a thumbs up.
What is the final? I'm a greenhorn when it comes to this. Do we have a formal vote?
Yes.
I'm seeing
2 seconds.
unanimous thumbs from all of my neighbors in Ward 7.
Ward 7.
Yes.
I think that's everybody. Do I want to make it? Thank you, Robert. Does anyone disagree?
Crickets.
Crickets.
We'd be lucky to have Olivia. Thank you.
I think that we are grateful for your involvement, Olivia. So welcome to the game.
Great, thank you.
My pleasure. And
do
I
we
will-
do that for Deb as well, or before she changes her mind?
Sure.
I think actually that would be appropriate, and then we can have a discussion. Why don't we do that to move things along?
Is Deb nominated also for the Ward 7 steering committee? Is that what it is?
I did nominate her.
Okay, so we're adding 2 more people. Okay,
No,
sure.
What I heard from Deborah is that she needs to consider the nomination.
Correct.
further.
Yeah, so it's a tentative, yes, it sounds like from Ward 7, and we can invite Deb to join us for one of our steering committee meetings and talk offline about
Okay.
what that could look like. So you could dip your toe in the pool, and the
then
nice
we-
thing is you can get out of the pool whenever you want.
And just to make sure, this is Ward 7, not 4, right?
Ward 7 is correct.
Yes.
So we're going to hold the nomination until later. Is that the consensus?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Clarification. Clarity is good. Deb, I see your hand up.
Yeah. So do I have to be a member of the steering committee to nominate someone for the steering committee?
No.
No. Well, then I don't know if Marcella would consider. Maricela, I'm sorry, I probably pronounced your name wrong. I apologize.
I've been doing it all night. Maricela, do you accept the nomination to consider joining steering committee?
I think I'm with you, Deb, in trying to understand what that means.
Okay.
And that's perfect.
It means work, which is why I never did.
Well, maybe we could do like a Zoom call with the steering committee and myself and Marcella and see what that means.
I think that's
Yeah,
great.
so if it's helpful, the way that I joined last spring for both of you was just by joining one of the steering committee groups. I was invited to join, and that way I got an idea of like, what does this work entail, and was able to talk with folks in that way and see if it fit into my schedule and what I wanted to do. And I know I'm a Ward 4 member, but Maricela and Deb, I would really value having both of your voices in the room. And so I certainly can't nominate you, but I would love to see you join us, even just for the conversation.
Ditto, I'll just put some numbers on it too, that this meeting's 2 hours, fourth Wednesday of the month, and our meeting to set the agenda is the first Wednesday of the month for an hour. So 3 hours per month.
with some homework assignments.
Right.
I see some more hands. Sarah?
Oh, I didn't know we were going this route, but I'd like to encourage Bridget Bozak to consider being a Ward 4 representative.
Bridget, do you accept the nomination to consider being a Ward 4?
Put
And we
me
don't
on
want to
the
put you
spot.
on the spot. We can invite you to join our next steering committee meeting.
I would. I thank you to Sarah, and I'm honored and I'm intrigued. And yes, please consider me. And I'm happy to join that Zoom meeting because, as I said, I'm quite intrigued. Thank you.
Thank you. This is fantastic.
I second.
Thank you.
This just woke me back up. This is great.
This is wonderful. Awesome.
We were a very tired steering committee, so.
Yeah, it's nice to have some
New people.
And we've been a little bit heavy on the gentlemen, so this brings us a little diversity. I see some more hands. Deb, your hand is still up?
Gosh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It shouldn't be up.
It's okay. No, that's all right. Sarah's down. So any other questions or nominations or discussions about NPA steering committee? I see no new hands. So now I will go to Jim Hallway with a community announcement.
So I want to announce that a number of folks have been putting together a business association to really to be thoughtful about what it means in the New North End to be a thriving business. Please get in touch with me if you're interested in learning more about it, if you are a business and have some particular needs that you think an association might help with, or if you'd like to be part of the committee that kind of plans out what we do. We're just getting underway. We spent a number of months trying to put together an activity here in the shopping center, a family fun kind of activity to also support the businesses in the shopping center due to the rising fear of or awareness of the Delta virus. We last night decided to cancel that. So, but what I also wanted to say is that the businesses in the New North End, as are around the community of Burlington, they're hurting for employees almost as much as, and perhaps even more than, customers. So if you know people who may be looking for some hours, please visit your local business and check in and see if it's something that can work for you or for whoever you might know. The economic vitality of a community where, as of the current census, we're just barely over 11,000 people north of the high school. And so the business is an important part of contributing to social events, community events, that sort of a thing, and supporting one another in our home-based businesses and so on. So just wanted to put out a sort of an encouragement to help our businesses. So thank you.
Thank you, Jim. And if there are no more questions or announcements, it is 9:03. We ran 45 or 50 minutes late in the beginning and we're 3 minutes over now. So I will adjourn the meeting and thank you all for your contribution.
Thank you, Matt. Well done.
Thanks, Matt.
Well done, Matt. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, folks. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.